So in the comments today, I was reading somebody wanted to ask me a bunch of questions, and they wanted to know more of the history about Pro Tools. Uh, at the beginning, when you bought a Pro Tools system, it was a system. You had to buy the card and the interface and the software. Software would not work without the interface, and you couldn't use the card and the interface without their software. So it all was it worked as one big system. And that all went on until I think it was Pro Tools 9, where they separated Pro Tools software so you could use the software with anybody else's interface, and you could use the software by itself and use the audio ins and outs of the computer. But up until that point, you had to use their card and their software with their interface. Now, there were some backdoor ways of getting other interfaces to work, even though it wasn't authorized by DigiDesign or Avid. What happened is audio interface companies were just reverse engineering their interfaces to work, and you would plug it in and it would work fine. But the problem was that if there was an update or an upgrade to Pro Tools, they could change something and then that interface wouldn't work at all. And I remember that happening with Apogee. Their interface just didn't work, and it took them about a week for them to get it up and running again. But that was the thing this guy, someone was asking. The other Pro Tools competitors. In the early 90s, Digital Dynamics was the main company that had a digital recording system, and Diaxis that was by Studer. And they were 2-track editing systems, very basic, but very expensive. The Digital Dynamics, it was a 464, meaning it was 4 tracks and you could expand it out to 64, but I don't know anybody who went out to 64. I remember we had sold one to WMMR in Philadelphia, the radio station, and Steve, I forgot his name. He was a good friend. He had one of those, and he used it for a long time, but got a Pro Tools system. He just used that to archive things. Steve Lushball, that's the guy. So that was, and after that, the main competitor was Sonic Solutions. So whenever I did seminars, the immediate comparison was between Pro Tools and Sonic Solutions. And Sonic Solutions did some fantastic things, but they were way more expensive. They had this one situation where you could put distorted signal in, and Sonic Solutions, the software, would chop up the audio in very thin slices and figure out what is distortion, what is a signal. And it would take distortion out of the signal, which was, and to this day, I don't know anything that does that, take the distortion out of a recorded signal. The other thing they were asking in the comments is, why did Pro Tools become why did Pro Tools become the main program? And the main thing was the price. You could buy a 4-channel interface with a card and the software, and it was $53.85, something like that. That was the price. So around $5,000, you could buy a system, and then you could buy an accelerator card, which was I think around $3,000, and it accelerated the process for your Pro Tools, your main card. And what made things it would do is just make things go faster. Your cursor would glide across the screen a lot easier. And then if you want, it was 4-channel increments, so you could add another card and that add another interface. So you could go to an 8-channel system, 12, and then 16 was the most that they had at the very beginning. So there's the history. I hope this answers this person's questions about the history of Pro Tools. And as far as at the very beginning, when I would take it out, it wasn't a very stable system. I mean, it would crash a lot, but people they didn't seem to mind, because there was nothing else at that price point that would do what it does. I mean, right now, you can get GarageBand for free and do what Pro Tools did back then. And this was no plugins or no EQ. It was basically, just you could do, I think you can do a little bit of mixing and cutting and pasting, and you could spool off the hard drive so you could overlap other things. So that was the cool thing. But there you go. I hope that answers the questions about the history of Pro Tools.